Since you mentioned Daryl Cooper, you're friends with him. Can you tell me about him and tell me about the whole saga about where he got attacked after the Tucker interview?
Yeah. So, well, Daryl, I was just a big fan. I'm really just a big fan of him. We chatted like a few times, and I interviewed him on my podcast, and I consider us friends. Martyr Made podcast is his show, and it's just phenomenal. I found out about him from my guy is Scott Horton, who's a very close friend of mine, and I think the best person on war in the country. He's just a genius. He runs the Libertarian Institute, and he's also been the editor at antiwar.com for many years now. So he first told me about Daryl, and what I knew of Daryl was just that he did a podcast with Jocko, and so like they did their show together, and I listened to a couple episodes of it and really enjoyed it. And then it was Scott who was like, dude, you got to check out his podcast, Martyr Made. It's like the best history podcast. You got it. And I ended up listening to his the first thing I listened to of his was the Fear and Loathing in the New Jerusalem. He's done a few things on Twitter where he's kind of like shit posting and stuff like that. But when you listen to his work, like when he lays down, like, I'm going to put together this thing, I'm going to take years to put together like a long presentation on the history of this conflict or the history of this. He has like the utmost responsibility in the way that he tells the story and the way he presents it. I cannot understand how anyone would listen to his work and come away with the feeling that this guy is any type of like Jew hater or Nazi apologist or anything like that. It's just not who he is. What Daryl said on Tucker's show was that he goes, I'll say this to be provocative sometimes to kind of rib my buddy Jocko, who's like Anglo-Saxon, so this kind of gets to him. He goes, and I'm being a bit hyperbolic when I say this, but I'll sometimes say that Winston Churchill was the chief villain of World War II. Now, he didn't commit the most atrocities. He wasn't like the worst person there, but he was a guy who was hell-bent on kind of this thing becoming what it ultimately became, whereas like this might have just been an invasion of Poland. This may not have been this whole cascade of like the worst thing that ever happened in human history. Now, the retelling of that is always people go, he said Churchill was the chief villain of the war, but it's like, no, not exactly. Like you know what I mean? What he's making a point, and I think he's putting out right now a long series on World War II. He just put the prologue to it out, which was excellent, by the way. And I really just have, listen, if after it's out, maybe I'll come back and regret saying this, but I don't think I will. I really have like trust that Daryl will handle this like responsibly, and in fact, I think that he might be. And not because he's like involved at like this is his angle or what he's attempting to do. I think just that he's going to tell the truth and the truth will take you where it takes you. I think he's actually going to probably serve a function of bringing a lot of those types kind of back to reality and bringing them back to being like if you think he's going to be excusing the atrocities of the Nazis in this thing, I don't think you're going to be happy with the end product if that's what you are coming into it for.
Okay. One thing I want to say is I think calling Daryl a Nazi sympathizer is just wrong, and it does a lot of damage. I think he has a lot of value to his podcast. I think there's several things to sort of make very clear. I think he's a really interesting guy. I'm sure I'll talk to him in the future, but I just want to lay on the table that I think what he's saying about Churchill is just dead wrong. I think legitimately that statement, removing the trolling from it, is a revisionist history statement that I think is wrong. The invasion of the Soviet Union would have happened no matter what. And possibly, which I'm actually learning a lot more, Stalin could have gone the other way as well. That was going to be a global war, no matter what. Churchill, the role of Churchill, we can debate. And I still don't think he was a main instigator of that expansion there. There's a lot of historical documentation of that.
Well, look, that's a fair debate to have, and it'd be interesting to see you two kind of talk about that. Or maybe not even debate it, but just like have a conversation about that.
Well, I think great. The broader point you're making is there's just a lot of trivialization of the World War II that happens in the West, in the United States especially, and that's used by neocons, by warmongers to sort of...
I mean, I don't think I've done a bunch of like Israel-Palestine debates, I don't think I've ever done one where World War II wasn't invoked, and where that wasn't like well, I mean, Dresden, Hiroshima, Nagasaki. So you're going to tell me it's not okay? And immediately, just if you just look at it like that, like let's say the official narrative is 100% true in World War II. Let's even say every aspect of the official narrative is really true. Like the lesson of World War II is that we should have gone to war sooner, which is essentially right, like the dominant mainstream narrative that Chamberlain is the failure. That was the problem, the appeasement. Churchill was the solution. If only Chamberlain had been Churchill, or if only we had gone to war with Germany and, whatever, in 1933, we would have it would have been better. Okay, let's say all of that's true. It still doesn't follow from that therefore in every situation, appeasement is wrong and aggression is good. It doesn't follow from that that's the only lesson of history, and that now it's just okay to slaughter civilians. Like it's okay to go to total war against a civilian population because this one time it was necessary. Like it's, and the idea that, Bobby Kennedy said this to me, again, somebody who I really do love and admire in many ways, and I'm glad he's the health secretary. But I remember him saying this, invoking the Nazis and making a comparison between Hamas and the Nazis. And you're like, dude, Hamas doesn't even control Gaza, really. The Nazis had most of Europe at one point. This is just not an apples to apples conversation. This is not, you can't even compare the two in terms of what type of menace or threat they are to the world. I mean, like, sure, maybe if Hamas had a lot of power, they'd use it in a bad way. But like, that's true with like some homeless guy on the street too, but he doesn't have that power. So like, what are we talking about here? And so I do think that the way the World War II narrative is weaponized has been, even if World War II itself was necessary and just, the way that that's been weaponized over the years has led to just like countless catastrophes. And like, it's not just like, I mean, I guess it's just, in some ways there might be something positive about the fact that everybody's always called Hitler if they're bad. You know what I mean? But because we make Hitler the face of what is evil eternally or something. He really does play the role of the devil in our society in a strange way. But there is like, Saddam was the next Hitler, and Gaddafi was the next Hitler, and Bashar al-Assad was the next Hitler. Trump is Hitler, Hamas is Hitler, except the problem is that like none of them are Hitler. None of them are even close. It's just totally different.
Yeah, and the amount of power is really important. Like, it matters how much destructive power you have within you, the capabilities. But like every major superpower with nuclear weapons has the potential to be that destructive. It's just unproductive.
And yet the only ones who ever have dropped them are us.
Yeah.
I was arguing with one guy on a podcast, and he said that, he goes, you can't allow dictators to have nuclear weapons because they might use them. And I was like, but we are the only ones who ever used them. And he goes, come on, that's naive or something. Like, wait, what? Why shouldn't that be pointed out? And I don't know. I mean, I'd prefer Iran not get nuclear weapons. I think we're pushing them to probably want to pursue that. And I also think there's been a lot of propaganda about the nuclear program in Iran. I know at least since the 90s, according to Netanyahu, they've been 5 years away.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of warmongering going on about all parts of the world, Iran especially. I have a lot of friends in Iran, from Iran. It's one of the most beautiful cultures in the world. Like this just superpower of intellect and culture, and it's really sad and disappointing that the regime is basically suppressing that culture.
Yeah.
You have to always remember, like, there's parts of the world where the people are beautiful and we don't get to see it because of the suppression, the lack of freedom.
Yeah. No, absolutely.